Abby, this episode was my absolute favorite. I love,
Oh,
and I'll tell you, I walked in to record it, and some difficult situation was going on in my life, and she picked up on it. Katie picked up on it, and I loved that this was a like modeling of how to relate to one another, toss the ball, the way she calls it. Oh, I love that episode.
yeah, for me, it felt like a master class, not just in going through the situation that you brought up in the conversation today, but just in also how you relate to each other, Katie and Sophie as friends, as, these connected beings in the world. So, oh my gosh, what a joy to witness, to watch. It definitely gave me a lot of insight and tools that I can use in my own relationship. So I'm excited for people to receive that.
I saw the way that we were relating to one another really is different. There was this flow and this spaciousness and this that I would like to write a book about this. I would like to write a book on how to help people figure out how to do that, because it's incredibly, even physically, I was hungry when we started, and I am not hungry. I'm just with me, like the nutrition of such connectivity.
Nourishment.
Mhm. All right. Well, this is a good episode. We liked it. This is a good episode. Have fun listening. Hi, Katie.
Hello, Soph.
I love this shirt on you so much. I particularly want to see, you were just telling me about these cufflinks. There's no buttons on this shirt.
I put this shirt on this morning, then I realized it has no buttons. And so I inherited, all kinds of jewelry from my mother, but including cufflinks from my dad. And so I was looking through my drawers and going, oh, there they are. And so it was very fun. I have a little, of my dad on my sleeves.
I love that. You have it up your sleeve. So something happened this week that was a little painful. A friend of ours has decided not to be friends with us because we don't agree on something pretty fundamental politically, which I'm not super interested in telling you exactly what that is.
Right.
That's cool. But it really caused a conversation that I would like to have with you, which is the value that this friend puts on that particular item that's making him break up with us, is so much more important for him than it is for us. And so on our side, we're like, wait, but that's not that important, but it's really important for him.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm left a little bit with values. How do you keep a friend? What if I discovered that you care so much about something that I find so offensive? Can I be friends with you? It kind of caused a little bit of a deep philosophical, what makes a friend? Can we be friends with people if they really do stand for something that's not at all what I stand for? I wanted your take on that. I was curious.
Oh, yeah, those are really important questions, especially right now. And I think what first occurs to me is that the atmosphere is so permeated with fear that it's really hard to discern because the overlay of fear keeps us from actually being able to analyze and think, because it takes us into our primitive brain. And so if I'm under threat, I'm going to see anything that the other person is doing is feeding that threat. So the first thing, I like to suggest to me and to everybody else is, breathe, let yourself do some fear melters, let yourself do some just giving and receiving of attention, and see if at that fundamental level of just being together, can you be together in harmony? Or is this thing just interfere with the whole, the whole symphony of being together?
Do you think maybe I'm not hearing exactly what you're saying? Should I avoid? Okay, so in my world, I like tackling things. I grapple with things, right?
Yes.
So I'm assuming that this person has a great heart, and I'm assuming that we can find a land of some sort of conversation. And so I stick it out a little bit.
Well, it's like you're making a bridge. The
Yes,
bridge
I
starts
really
from the
attempt to.
shore,
That's
and
true.
you put it out there, and it's sort of not finished because you need it coming from the other side.
It's a half a bridge.
And yeah, it's half a bridge, but what I hear is that you've extended yourself.
Yes.
And to me, that invitation is so precious. If someone is opening themselves, they're open to contact, and I don't respond to that. To me, that's a fundamental. I think that you go off the bridge then and into the and into the drink.
So then it sounds like then we really have to be clear, like, where is your line? Like for you, the line sounds like if you were to do have the bridge and I don't meet you have the bridge, that's like, okay, well then you're in the water. Or I'm in the
But
water.
also then if I make the whole bridge, then I'm the hero.
Yes.
And then that gives them only two other choices, to be the villain. You didn't make the bridge right, and so I'm not going to use it. Or the
Well,
victim.
for me, I can't really do my own.
I can't really,
bridge.
but this bridge is not for walking. It's only for, so
Yeah.
victims will always find something, to complain about. And
Yes.
so for me, the sort of the acid test would be, are you willing? Are you willing to, and I was hearing from you that you like to do what I call tussling.
Yeah.
So like in relationships, and it's really a style of relating that can be very, very fun, which is you get in there and you sort of tussle, or, you sort of play with each other until something emerges.
Yes.
And which is very different than we're going to look at this intellectually, and we're going to look at the pros and cons. And so you're coming at it from more of an intellectual basis, but you're coming at it from actually a play perspective.
Yes.
Are we willing to get into the sandbox together and just sort of work it out? And it, for me, it's been so sad and painful when, I'm in the sandbox and the other person's going, ew, or, sandbox is dirty, or I'm not going to play with you in the sandbox. Yeah.
So what's interesting there, I hear in the tussle approach, is that we have to trust each other a little bit. Like it's hard to tussle with someone, I think, or at least trust myself that I can recover. The tussle is going to lead to something. Like I think a lot of people are afraid that if they enter a water that they don't know, that maybe there's nothing there, or there's something really bad there. And so
right, like alligators in the water,
Yes. Where I trust, not only they might be alligators, it's possible. Sometimes in relationship, you enter waters that are really slippery.
Yeah.
So, but also I trust myself and I trust the universe. If I get eaten by the alligator, it's like, all right, well, that was that, but it's not worth not doing it. Like for me, there's more value in the doing it, risking something than not doing it. But in this case, in the conversation, it stopped with, there was no willingness. It's almost like the only acceptable answer was, I need you to agree with me. Like they needed us to agree with his position, which would be going against everything that's my stand. And so it sounds like there's no place to go in this friend. It really is no place to go in this friendship.
Yeah. And there are two sides to that. One, there's the sadness of loss.
Mm-hmm.
And I can kind of hear that in you, and I can see that in your, there's this, because you're willing and they're not.
Yes.
And, and I've had that experience many times in my life of, I'm willing and they're not. And so dealing with your loss, and the loss of that friendship and, or that possibility, but just the sadness of loss, I think really needs to be honored, and not skipped over, but, to be with it and to see if there's anything to express about it. But so the other possibility, though, is that you're opening space from your own integrity. So you're choosing integrity over the compromise that you would need to make to make space for somebody who's not really playing fully, going all the way in their playing. When Gay and I first got together, we went to this place called Poor Richard's in Colorado Springs, and I remember sitting in in the front table, and we were looking out over the square of the city, and we decided, we had no idea what this meant, but we decided we were going to go all the way. Like, what's possible
with each other, with each other.
With each other. We're going to go all the way. And so we were both, so that kind of, what's our initial agreement with each other? What are we willing to do? And what are we willing to open to giving and receiving? And then that intention was the engine for everything that has occurred over the last 45 years.
And when you think of that, do people do that? Like, it sounds to me more that people realize that they're not aligned when something gets violated. Like, let's say you would not have decided that, but he thinks that, but you kind of don't. So comes a situation where he goes all the way in and you don't even know that we have agreed to go all the way in at that point.
Yes.
Sounds to me like people are not very deliberate with how, it reminds me of how we go about our health. Instead of attempting to keep healthy, we tend to fix when something breaks.
Right. And this was, we were talking before the call about what I've noticed in society in general is the whole caring for. We get into like the excitement of a relationship, all the and the energy, but then there's the caring for and the recommitting, and the looking at, what am I overlooking? What's here for me to learn? How can I expand our love and harmony? And when there's any kind of a roadblock, which is inevitable, we actually call it the second stage in relationships, is the inevitable. It comes after romance, where you go, oh my God,
everything is
wonderful, and you're the most. And then our lessons, like what comes up that's going to allow us to sustain and develop and care for, and nurture the bud of the relationship. And most people, I don't think, have very little experience or education in how to care for.
Yes, and stamina. Like, I find people, and maybe it's kind of like, the flipping through the phone, like.
You mean swipe right or swipe left?
Swipe, the swipe.
Yes.
It's like, oh, they look cool. All right. No, I don't like that. Swipe, swipe, swipe. It's almost like, and maybe it's an age thing. I don't know. Maybe I just remember being a young person looking at older people saying, "Oh, the old way." Maybe doing a version of that, but there is something to, like, my friends that are single right now. I watch the dynamic of, they go on a first date, and it sounds cool, but then the person uses that word. I don't like that word. And off they go to the next thing.
Right. It's like in Alice in Wonderland, it's like off with their heads.
Off with their heads really quickly. And so it's a little like, I don't know if I don't want to go into fear, but it's going to create very different kind of relationships than what I feel like I care about.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, and I've noticed a couple of times as you've been talking about, this kerfuffle that you had, that you scratched your head. So yes. To me,
I am scratching my head over it a little bit.
Yes. Well, you're scratching your head, but that's also what we would call an anger flag. So,
okay. Yeah.
Irritated. So I invite you to also take a look at, what do you feel? So anger is about a fundamental unfairness or a trespass, where somebody's, figuratively stepped on your foot. And so there might be some of that also. And for me if I were going to repair, in that interaction, we would need to go through the feelings, the emotions, and be able to hear, and receive. I felt sad and angry about this. And then something might emerge out of that. But if you can't do it with that person, my sense is you need to do it with somebody, because you've got little gaps in your wholeness right now.
I do. Like, it took it and anger, and also disappointment a little bit. Yeah. Like, I thought we shared values, and it's an important friendship, and it's a little it is sad. I think the anger is more around, how did I not, like, I think it's angry towards me a little bit. Like, how did I miss? This is a pretty fundamental, the topic never came up, and so we never really explored. But now that we have, how did I not, But is it really fair to ask of myself that I need to check with everyone?
Well, it sounds like you're blaming you.
I do. I'm blaming myself a little bit. I'm blaming myself that I went in deeply in a friendship without doing a little proactive research, to what do they seem to believe and
Well, I don't really know of any relationship that people get into rationally.
yeah.
It's really, you have that spark of connection, of mutual interest, or you get more energy being together. There's this, there's a romance version of friendship also,
Yes,
where
of course.
oh my God, you like that too? I read that when I was 14 and it was just
How
changed my
fun.
life. And that juice is really what kind of, it ignites the engine of the relationship. But just like a rocket taking off, you can't sustain that level of ignition. You have to have some other way of generating the connection that I think comes from a willingness to learn, a willingness to listen, and a willingness to play. So I think our be play love is is a
Fits
perfect
right in.
recipe for and one or the other of them might really be coming forward. Like, this is something that's really wanting to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
Or I was never with that. I never let myself be with that.
Mm-hmm.
And now I get a chance to be with it. And so there can be some acknowledgement of, oh, this was a whole area that I was just not aware of. And now I'm opening up to that. Like, when you're talking about trust, for me, trust is first about safety.
Mm-hmm.
Am I willing to generate safety, or am I making the other person responsible for generating safety? So for me, generating safety comes from my commitment to say things that are unarguable.
Mm-hmm.
And my commitment to listen is as deeply and as generously as I can, rather than using listening as a way to pounce on, do a gotcha. Yeah, you said that and that's wrong. And
I always find it funny on a side. I find it funny when you ask a question and people already seem to have like I barely asked the question. Did you think about what I said, or are you just kind of humping, just
exactly. It's a way it's like a slam in pickleball.
Yeah.
So they're not really wanting to respond. They're waiting for the setup so they can slam.
Yes, that's very true. Wow. Have you started playing pickleball? Did I miss that episode? Oh, I haven't talked to you in a week. Now you play pickleball? Tell me more.
Well, there may be some pickleball in my future, but not quite yet. But the whole sense of the dynamic of relationship. And it's basically also too, if you've tossed something to me, do I drop the ball?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or do I catch the ball? And it might even be sticky, or like, ew, I don't know what you, but I catch the ball. And then I respond, and then I toss the ball back to you. So I just have seen so many times that people do not realize, one, that they haven't tossed the ball. Like, if you've been in a relationship where someone just goes on and you're kind of waiting to.
Yes. Hey, I don't even have a.
Right. You could just put a picture of you up there, and it wouldn't be the same.
That's funny. It's funny because I'm tracking now that you said that, like this anger feeling. I have another set of friends who I sent a text to announce that I wanted to talk about something a little bit difficult, and I mentioned briefly what the difficult thing was, and the response I got was, "We clearly not friends. If you don't think picking up your phone is not more important, blah 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 blah." And I was like, wait, was I informed that you only respond to and eventually we talked. And one of them said, nothing I've ever had to say that's difficult worked out by text. And I was like, but that's your story. Like, sometimes calling someone, you put them on the spot so much that they only can react. And I think it's sometimes really respectful to give you a sense that I want to discuss something, so you don't show up like, la, 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 la. And I'm like, I want to talk about something really serious.
Right. Yeah. You're giving them, I was thinking, like, you're setting the table.
A little bit, so the person knows if we're doing Mexican or Chinese. I think that's
Right.
a fair, invitation, but they broke up. They did it, and it's funny because when you said the tossing, I tossed something. You don't like the way it's tossed, respond and say, hey, in the future, please don't text that kind of thing. Just call us. It's like, okay, good to know. And but do you think people know? Like, do you think it's something that we could be a little bit more deliberate and intentional? Because we do it for people we're going to be in romantic partnership more, maybe like, oh, if this person is going to be parenting a child with me or something like that, I think we do a little more. Where do you sit on this, and how would you do that, right? Like people do a little more of that. But in friendship, I'm not sure people take the time to do that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, and also I think we live in an instant gratification
Yeah,
and a throwaway society.
yeah,
And people just think, well, if I don't like it, I'll just throw it away.
yeah.
And really not understanding that there really is no a way. There's,
You
you
with
toss it.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the whole sense of reciprocation of, if you've taken the time to share something with me
Mm-hmm.
and I just toss it,
Mm-hmm.
I even as I'm trying that on, it
Your
feels very
face just went
hurtful.
like disgusted.
It's sort of, it's sort of icky.
Yeah.
And so, and then that's why in my relationship work with people, tossing is really at the center. Is, how do I receive the toss? Do I even if you think of it as a ball, do I let the ball go by?
Yeah.
Do I knock it back? Do I stamp on it? Or do I not even notice and it hits me in the head? Or
Yeah. Yeah.
so the whole idea of what am I doing in my conversations, in my exchange of energy, and if there are gaps in tossing, that just affects everything else in the relationship and in friendship. So, for example, are you always the one who tosses?
Yeah.
So, like, here's my idea of where we could go, or here's a project that we could work on, and the other person goes, well, yeah, okay,
And
don't
drag
really
them
go
along or something.
right, like you're their assistant or something.
Where do you think is a good stance then? Um, how do I be a better tosser player with you? Because I could be the reason I may not catch the ball is because I'm over there dealing with something else, or like what is like it requires an incredible amount of presence, what we're talking about.
Yes, it requires an incredible amount of be
Yeah.
here now,
Yeah.
and that practice is a body practice, is a practice of breathing, of noticing myself and noticing you. It's what I call loop of awareness, and so I think that's the fundamental skill that I can keep developing in myself, which allows me to notice because I can notice now things that that formerly in my life it would just pass by and I would never notice, but I can see like there's a little like I noticed that there's a sadness,
Mhm. Mhm.
and because I'm your friend, I go, hey,
Mhm.
I'm noticing
Let's
something, and I
pause.
and I
Yeah.
also will share. Oh, when I tune into you, I feel just this
Mhm.
kind of a little heaviness in my
Mhm.
high chest, and I want to lean forward and go, oh, honey,
Yeah, the
and
boo-boo.
just and in that, and so even as we're just play acting this, I feel more
Yes,
flow in my own body.
me
I
too.
feel more connection with you,
Yes.
and then there's more possibility, not just between us but between me and the rest of my life,
Yes.
because it's the same skill that allows me to have a successful life is noticing me and then noticing what's going on and noticing me so that I'm here, but I'm also engaged. And I think so many people are not here. And I think the main reason for that is our
Oh,
devices. So
yeah.
I'm in my phone and then occasionally I will look up and then you appear more like a screen than
Mhm.
a 3, 4, 5 dimensional being. And
Mm.
so my communications bounce off rather than creating an opening. So
Mhm.
my intention is always to create and respond to what's the opening here,
Mhm. Mhm.
where it's like the other part of the bridge.
Yes.
I'm looking for how can we join together to, create something new,
Yeah.
a new bridge, a new connection.
I like the way you tied it earlier to there's so much fear, because as you're describing that, I realized the second you said, you noticed a couple things. You spoke of my sadness, and you spoke of like picking up a little bit of anger with my scratching my face a little bit. Um, but I didn't fight you. Like I was really
Exactly.
open. Like I
You
let it
didn't
in.
defend.
No, I didn't defend. I let it land. At first I was like, anger, that's interesting. There was curiosity,
Exactly.
that I feel really safe. You were correct as well. It's not about like I trust you. I do trust you, but it's also because I trust myself, and I bring myself in an open space. Like I don't bring myself with, terror and fear that you're gonna see something that I want to hide from you. And if anything,
Right.
I'm like, how kind and how generous of you to even take the time to
Yeah.
risk, because to say to someone, you look like you have a little anger about this. I mean, there's a chance it doesn't land well.
Yes.
Right. And
Yes. And
so
I'm willing to take that chance
I
because
think that's where I was going. It's like I think it takes a little bit of, if I had said to you, you know what, F you, like why are you calling my, why are you calling my
yeah,
anger?
what about you? Yeah.
You look like you touched your hair too. So that is so not interesting to me. That would be so not interesting. And I don't know how I got to a place where I don't, it doesn't, I'm not afraid of it. It's like I'm interested. I'm interested in seeing. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I guess maybe in the past I wasn't as curious and I wasn't as interested. So there's hope. Like I got to a place where that's all that interests me. It really truly interests me to.
Well, what I'm hearing in that is that you've chosen curiosity over
Yeah,
and over again. You have favored curiosity, you've favored
yeah,
wonder, which is something that we can do because the default position is the critical brain,
yes,
that keeps things out and says, no, no,
yes,
not this. So your openness to learning, your openness to discovery is something that you have been caring for. You
yes,
have been nurturing that plant for a very long time, and
correct.
it's robust now.
Yeah,
So for me, trust comes out of the repeated actions and commitments that are about connecting and being open to receiving and tossing and letting my attention land and going into the unknown,
mm-hmm.
over and over again, rather than I know what you're going to say.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing you always say, and that kind of predictability, the
Yes.
same old that people go through, what that deadens. I think that kills relationships faster than anything.
Say more about that. What is it that deadens exactly?
Well, is if I already have predicted how you're going to respond,
Predictability. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and the predictability, and I've already sort of gotten there before you.
Yeah.
So I've anticipated what you're going to say, or you fit into a category, and I just place you in that category
Yeah.
without looking at you as, an open developing, an open system.
Yes. Yeah. It's like conversations with you always have me, whatever I enter with, that's what's beautiful, is like, even if I enter with my own, whatever, tension, limitation, fear, whatever I bring, being a human and all. But I feel like your conversation with you always leaves me with more, it's spacious. There's a spaciousness. Oh, you like that word, huh?
I do,
Look
yes,
at her right
because
now. It's like I give her candy.
yeah, really.
Healthy candy.
Well, it is. It does. It's a nutrient,
Yes.
and we're trying to get our nutrition, from rocks. Many people don't realize that it's the giving and the receiving of attention that is our basic nourishment that we require lifelong. And so if we can't get it, in ways that are caring and that sustain a connection, we're going to get it any way we can, by being dramatic or being, or being blamey, or being whiny,
Hero. Oh, heroing.
or heroing. Yes.
Mhm. That's
Yes, we
a
can fix
subtler,
this.
that's a more subtle way to enter that room, but it's also a move that creates predictability. It's like it doesn't create openness.
Right. And predictability, I think when people are scared, they go more for predictability.
Yeah.
This is something I can count on. So I've seen people in relationships that we call, familiar but miserable. And
Yes.
people will choose familiar but miserable
Over.
over unknown but possible.
Yes. I remember this story where it was in a workshop. Someone used it as a make a point kind of moment. And they were describing this banquet. So there's this banquet over there, like 20 feet from us. And there's a guard at the door of this banquet. And I want to go to the banquet. But they say to me, you can go to the banquet, but you're going to have to leave your rotten peanuts with me to get to the banquet. And I'm like, oh no, but I know my peanuts. Okay, maybe they're rotten. I don't know if this banquet is true. Like, is it possible it's an illusion? Like, I don't want to risk. And so I stay with my peanuts. I don't. I would definitely drop my peanuts to go to the banquet. But I remember this experience of like, how often do people stay with their rotten little whatever situation, their job or their relationship or a dynamic? Like I see people, like I have friends right now that have teenagers that are really difficult and they kind of quitting. They kind of like, it's like, it's what it is. And I think that doesn't have to be the way it is. It's like you can at least, feed and attempt and toss.
Yes, and toss with for the possibility. So nobody, pitchers and particularly in baseball, there are thousands and thousands of tosses to train people to be able to respond, in the dynamic way that they do.
Right?
It's just like, the practice of the piano or any kind of an art.
Yeah.
But, you look at people who are very accomplished and they go, well, they can do it. And, and I can't. But we neglect practice.
Yeah.
I was just occurring to me that practice is the fundamental art of sustaining and caring for. And if I'm not willing to practice with you, I think that, I should just get it. And if we don't have that compatibility, then let's just toss it because it's all over.
Yeah.
But the actual practice, you get better at the skill and you have more fun.
And so where do you think that line is? Because there are people that stay in relationships with others still trying to make it work. And like, where is that line? Where's the line between I'm practicing how to do this better and now I feel like I'm being abused or I'm being not respected in this dynamic? Like, how do you read when it's time to shift?
Well, I'm seeing in my mind the cover of Conscious Loving, which is about co-commitment.
Yeah.
So it's a very fundamental is, I'm committed, and Gay's committed, and we are co-committed. So we're two whole people who have chosen to continue this game of learning and discovering and caring for each other. And when there's a kerfuffle, then we recommit to the fundamentals. And so what I would look at is what are the fundamentals for you?
It's funny.
It sounds like you uncovered one of the fundamentals.
Exactly.
That had been hidden.
That is exactly right. And I'm very grateful for that. Like I shifted my annoyance, pain, anger, whatever we named at the beginning. I've shifted it to, I'm so grateful that somehow it's almost like people behave in ways that tells you they self-select in some ways. It's like by the way this person communicated, it's like they're out of the game. I would have stayed in the game. I would have, tried to play. But it's like if they walked out of the field, it's like I don't care how many baseball I toss, they're not catching it. They're not here.
Right, they're not in the field anymore. And so the basic thing that I've talked about in terms of getting into the pool, if I want to learn something, like if I want to learn how to swim, the fundamental is I have to get into the pool.
Yes.
So if I'm not in the pool, I can have lots of opinions and judgments
even
about
fears of, is it going to support me? Am I going to drown if I get into this water?
Right.
Before you realize that when you're in the water, it actually really does support you. So that I've never seen it that way. Get in the pool if you want to learn how to swim. That is really basically simple and yet really profound.
Yes, and it's that fundamental. It actually is very simple, but we make it way complicated.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to it, like if you had been one of my clients and I'd said, it looks like you're scratching your head, it looks like I'm not angry. And the person defends, against that information coming in, then they've gotten out of the pool.
Yes.
And so the idea, okay, what do we need to do to get back in the pool? Are you willing to get back in the pool?
Yes.
And in the beginning of a relationship, or when there's a difficulty that comes up, or more of a, something to learn, or something that actually is one of the fundamentals,
Yes.
like, are we going to be honest with each other?
Yeah.
And I can remember early in our relationship where, because Gay is a hottie, and he was really hottie back in the day, and had all kinds of women who were, wanted to sort of, in my opinion, were trying to pull him away from me and not acknowledge me, and et cetera. And there was flirtation and stuff going on. So we really sat down and talked about, okay, what's our agreement about how we're going to behave, with our sexual feelings. And we made a commitment about what we were going to do. And then when something would come up, we would recommit to that. And so one of the things was that it was, I'm not going to try and control Gay's feelings. I have no control over them, but that's a lot of what goes on. You can't be attracted to that woman. And so we would be like walking down the street. I remember one time walking down the street with Gay in Colorado Springs, and this really attractive woman walked by, and we were continually walking. And I said, "Great boobs, huh?"
Oh,
He kind of giggled, and so I'm acknowledging, that sexual feelings are a rich part of life.
yes.
So enjoying your sexual feelings is part of being in the pool, but making agreements about how you're going to express your sexual feelings, that's something that we could make an agreement about. And we did.
That is really powerful, because I do see a lot of people, she doesn't say, or he doesn't say that, this thing is causing feelings that are difficult. If you sit down and you speak of those feelings, again, in an unarguable, I love when you speak of that, this unarguable way to say, like, I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but I can say it's sad for me when I watch you look at this woman's boobs, and, I wonder if you like mine or whatever. Like,
right. And so that's what occurs. And then that's what gets to be expressed. And we toss that back and forth. And then it becomes more of the aliveness that we can
so much more
share.
spacious. Yes.
There's the spacious. And what's resulted from that over the years is that I have become completely unedited with Gay. I can absolutely and what's occurred out of that is lots of creative thoughts coming up, because I'm not taking up the space in there with being defensive, or, trying to judge what he's doing or anticipate what he's going to do. But so then there's more creativity, which creates more variety, which creates more attraction, which it creates that spark of romance over and over again. Yeah. And so that's why we say that you can rekindle romance over and over again. It's not like you get attracted and then it's all over.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you can keep the spark of invention and aliveness and newness moving. It's also true for friendships.
Mm-hmm.
And and sharing, and the whole experience of being able to be fully yourself with another is so precious. And that's one of the things I cherish about my relationship with you, is that I can just be.
Yes.
However, and I know that because I've had the experience of you receiving that, and then taking it in, and you add to it.
Yeah.
You don't just go boom and and knock it back at me. Go,
here's the ball.
Yeah, here's the ball. That what was it? That we used those paddle balls when I was a kid. I was never.
Yeah, it was an elastic attached to the.
Yes, the elastic where you hit the ball. And,
yeah. I love that. Oh, I love that as a visual, for not the hitting of the ball, but the joy of the back and forth, and the fluidity of that.
And it's one of the basic games. Also, if you go anywhere in the world, tossing a ball is a fundamental game.
Yes.
And it has survival value also. I mean, it's not just that it's a game. It's a way of being able to notice what you need to give attention to in your environment, and also how to aim your attention in a way that's going to, catch the beast, or notice that a child is getting near the fire, or, there are all kinds of survival, but also connectivity skills that come from you're being able to receive and then add to and then toss back. But the end goal, I want people to know that openness and the ability to be undefended and just open to what's there, which I imagine that many people have never experienced. And it is one of the most beautiful experiences. It's certainly the most beautiful experience that I've had in my life so far.
Me too. Yeah, this is a beautiful place to stop. But thank you for this conversation. I feel so much more lifted. I feel, you're right, there was a heaviness about it. And now I feel it's like back to tossing and back to playing.
Yeah, back in the game where that's where the fun is.
Yes. Oh, let's live there, please. I love you. I'll talk to you.
Love you. Thank you.